A third case, frequently cited by those on the right, is that the federal government introduced a moral hazard on Wall Street. In other words, the major players in the financial sector believed that they could take irrational risks knowing that they would be bailed out. Once again, this explanation is inadequate because historically most investors have not been protected from their financial losses. And that means that in 07-08 it was impossible for anyone to predict in advance who would be bailed out. So there was no moral hazard introduced ahead of the financial collapse. The more realistic causes are as we enter the recession, as many as half of all mortgages in the U.S. were considered inferior and liable to default. And this was a clear result of government housing policies to encourage home ownership, which resulted in a broad mislocation of capital, loosened mortgage standards, and created distortions in the real estate market. For example, the 1977 Community Reinvestment Act required that banks offer loans to borrow in their service area that were at or below 80% of the area's median income. In other words, banks were required to offer loans to people who were less able to afford mortgages, and they weren't allowed to use their own lending standards.